All right, folks, we're going to jump in and get started to our number 7 session of In the Lab. So, we're going to be talking Intune today, but we're going to tell you how Nerdio can help you get the most out of your Intune. And I got two great guests. But before we jump in, my name's Pete Downing. I host these once a month, and we're going to continue to do these through the end of the year into next year. We got a lot of great guests coming up. And I also have a surprise topic we're going to throw into the mix, so keep an eye out for that. It might not be on a Wednesday, it might be on another day. So we're going to try something new and maybe do that quarterly. But on the call today, we got a returning expert, Mr. Doug Lind. Doug, give yourself an intro and tell us what you do for Alchemy. And you mentioned that you came from a customer and you have some Intune pains, and you're going to share those today, right?
Absolutely. So welcome, everyone. Doug Lind here. I'm one of the principal architects at Alchemy. I kind of cover everything cloud, modern data center, Microsoft endpoint specific. So been here for just shy of 8 years, helping all kinds of customers be successful in what they do. And yeah, like Pete was saying, I do come out of the customer space. So prior to, my role here at Alchemy, I was a senior director for a couple of large California-based product manufacturers. So I spent 21 years on the enterprise side of the world in IT, building and running teams supporting endpoints, data centers, cloud, pretty much anything that you can imagine on that front. I had the opportunity to be able to get into the weeds and also lead teams supporting it. So I definitely have a couple of endpoint challenges here that we kind of want to address today. But with that, I think I'll turn it back over to you, Pete. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in, Doug. I know you're busy. And also on the call today, we got Don Lawrence. So, Don, where are you based and how long you been at Nerdio?
Thanks, Pete. Hi, everyone. Don Lawrence, sales engineer here with Nerdio, based out of sunny South Florida. Been with Nerdio a little bit over a year, and similar to Doug, come from the administration space, come from the customer side of this. Prior to working for Nerdio, I was their customer for about 5 years. I worked for a nationwide pediatric provider prior to this, got them out of their domain and into Intune, out of Citrix into ABD. And prior to that was with an MSP here in South Florida for about 8 years, doing all things old school on-prem work. So looking forward to sharing anything I can about easy ways or hard ways to do things, very much based in practical experience. So looking forward to talking with you all today.
All right. So before we jump in, just a quick high-level overview on who is Alchemy for those who don't know who we are. We've been around 9 years, and our formula is very simple. We try to hire the best talent. So we get guys like Doug. We get guys like Scott, myself. We focus on getting good talent. We focus on partnering with the best technology. We don't sit here and try to boil the ocean and partner with everybody. No, we partner with best of breed, modern, relevant technology and form solid partnerships. And then finally, our goal is to build trust with you, the customer, the client. And you can see we have a lot of great accolades, and we've been around a long time. And yes, we are nationwide and have folks that sit across the United States. And the result is we have over 1,200 customers across the country, and we have over 32 Partner of the Year awards. Our expertise spans the gamut of cybersecurity all the way over to app development. Yes, we can do onshore app development and have a really strong focus there, especially with this new thing called AI. AI seems to be the talk everywhere you go, but with that comes work and workflows, et cetera, and fun. But the good news is we cover everything from cyber, digital workspace, app development, AI, data, et cetera. But today, we're going to be jumping into the digital workspace side. I haven't done this in a while. I'm excited because Nerdio has been around a long time, and we're going to talk about Intune. And with that, Mr. Doug, I think you're going to take the reins, or Don, you're going to take, and we're going to have a little fun today, folks, because this session is going to be unique in that it's going to be pretty much all demo. So get ready, ask questions, and have some fun watching.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Pete. So to kind of drill down into a couple of the questions that were in the poll. Simplicity, app management, how do we get information coming out of Intune? Those are going to be the things that we really want to drill into today. So to kind of add on to my intro, as an IT director running infrastructure, one of the things that I had under my belt was both service desk, help desk, and endpoints. So I ran roughly about 5,000, 5,500 endpoints globally and had to fully support all of that environment on a day-to-day basis to go through. And, tools of old, we got to know them really, really well. Many of us that are kind of here today, probably a fair number of people that are on the call, they come from a world where something like a configuration manager exists. And in Config Man has been around for eons and an eternity, it seems like, since the SMS days. And there were a lot of things that if Microsoft didn't have it in the product, chances are there was a community tool or a third-party tool that you could get to be able to get information to come out of that. So as that evolution has grown, as that modernization, as that employee choice, the cloud adoption, having, workflows that are very, very different now than they were, 10 years ago, oftentimes what we see is tools adjust, but sometimes they're better, and sometimes they're equivalent, and sometimes they're just lacking. So in that, as that IT director and being here on the Alchemy side now and talking to customers day in and day out, one of the biggest questions that I was always asked, and my CIO asked me constantly, and one of the biggest items around customer calls today is, great, my fleet's in Intune. I may have EDR assigned to it. I may have a CrowdStrike. I may have a Defender. I have, SentinelOne. I've got 100 different tools that are out there. But the one question that seems to evolve and it seems to, cause problems for everybody is patching. Is my fleet patched? Can I validate that? And if not, how do I go through to be able to add that on? From an Intune perspective, that information is almost impossible to get out. So enter Nerdio. And one of the things that Nerdio brings inside of their Intune management, their device management, is they have built an entire reporting platform for Intune. So inside of here, we have in a very quick view a number of different items. We've got patch status. We've got warranty coverage if we actually have a Dell device. We've got issues. We've got configuration status, and we've got compliance status. So if I were asked that question today, what state is my fleet in? Are they patched? What percentage is patched? How is that trending? With Nerdio, I now have a very simple, easy way that exposes that information up to date. And I can see on, this screen here, we are 85.17% patched and up to date. And of those, 7 of them are overdue. 4.7 is not supported anymore. And 2.14, well, we don't know what it is, but let's go dig into that. So Don is my driver at the moment. And when he's starting to get into reports here, we have the ability to filter reports via a number of different states. So we can see that patch status is overdue high. These are going to be devices that are here, they're missing, they're reporting. Let's drill into one of those. So if we dig into this patch and we can see what our patch is here, we have an entire report of every single patch that's applicable for this device and what state it's in. So in this case, this device probably about 7 months ago started to have an issue. These are things that we run into all of the time. And if we drill down into one of those patches, Don, can we actually see information on that patch itself? Is that possible from this screen? I know we can get it from another version.
No, this is going to be the depth of where you go in terms of the build number.
So we can say, okay, what is this KB? It's 10187. We can view this information. We can get it. We can go through. So in that, 3-click scenario, I have full visibility of patch status from the overall environment. I can get patching information and reporting for a specific patch, for an out-of-band patch, for an immediate patch. If you go back to trends up top, and can we pick our patching trend? So here we have how are things going over time. So, when patches came out roughly, what was that, the 9th and 10th That would be right after Patch Tuesday. And I can see that my number does increase over time as that goes through. And then throughout the month, kind of looking in the last month at the first of what would have been, or 1st of September, I can say that I am above 90% patch. That is my threshold. And those thresholds are adjustable. So we can actually see that patch trend over time to be able to go through. I know there are customers that we talk to that have a faster time frame where they need to hit that 90% view. Here we can actually see that. Once we see it, now we have the number to be able to manage that. So if we are in a 1-month cycle where we need to be compliant, we're pretty close here on this regard. We can actually see that when patches come out, they drop and they start to patch fairly fast. If this was a 2-week cycle or a 1-week cycle, now we know we have things to view. Now we know we have problems to go after. And now that gives us the insight to be able to start to make changes, adjustments to process, procedure, etc. Those are going to be the things from a reporting perspective that aren't in Intune natively and are really, really hard to pull out, if not impossible. And if we kind of dig into some of this reporting a little bit more, let's go back to dashboards if we could. And inside of dashboards, that compliance breakdown by department. So these are going to be things that kind of come in line. Departments are going to be here, but HR, for example, we've got half of our devices that are compliant, half of them are uncompliant. And if we look at that human resources 50% that's red and drill into that, we can see it's one red device. And let's see what that is. So if we look at that high compliance item, we have that, it has a default device compliance policy. That default is non-compliant. I think number one, in Intune, we always want to have a compliance policy set, because oftentimes if it's just the default, we may not be compliant at all. So now we can see, hey, this machine here is falling out of sort in some way. Let's kind of see what that is. So can we go up to config policies here? And now we see, well, we're getting policy. We may not be getting patches, but let's take a look at that. And yeah, that's probably where our compliance is, because we are more than 30 days out from a patch cycle. We are falling out from a compliance for patching. So let's address that and kind of do something with it. Now we can actually address, we can send a tech, we can look at it, we can start to investigate why that machine is not patching and hasn't been patched for 7 months. Again, insight equals action. We can't action if we don't have the insight. This gives us the metrics to be able to go further into that device management status, to be able to add the speed to service, to be able to get insights, to be able to get actions. And then also this gives, most companies the insight to be able to say, hey, I need to make a big change. Here's my information. Here's the metrics on what that looks like. And how do we go through?
I can throw a little bit of extra salt and pepper on it here. We're coming back to the dashboards. Some of my favorite features here is that you can have more than one dashboard. So right now we've just got the one default dashboard here. But if I click edit, this is fully customizable. So I can move all these around, resize them if I don't want that one anymore, get rid of it. And we have a whole series of additional widgets. So as Doug's mentioning, trying to get information out of Intune, like the information's there, but it's scattered. A lot of times you got to build your own reports or go to a lot of different areas. So here we're going to give you that flexibility to very quickly be able to select metrics relevant to any particular dashboard. So you may have an admin dashboard, you have a NOC dashboard, and different people can have different dashboards for different things. So you can really just start getting straight to the information that matters to any particular group of people at any time, and format this in a way that's going to work for you. One additional note about warranty coverage, as he mentioned, online with Dell devices right now, we do intend to have support for HP and Lenovo online, hopefully within the next few months. But this has definitely been one of our very popular tools. It came out in May. We've been developing on it greatly. We definitely appreciate feedback on it. So if you ever talk with any of the Alchemy folks or talk with us directly and you think, hey, this is cool, but love to also see it report on XYZ, we'd love to hear that feedback.
Hey, Don, since we got a little pause here, hopefully this aligns, but someone asked a good question. They said, hey, we're already a Nerdio customer. Is there an Intune plugin or a new billable item within the console that they turn on or off? So
it is. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'll say technically not new billable, I'll be very clear about how that gets scoped. So yes, it is enabled. And again, I won't go through the whole thing, but short version is yes, you come down into settings, and depending on what version you're on, this may look a little different. But effectively settings, integrations, and you would kick on the Intune integration, which would then lead to Intune Insights. Please, if you are working with, if you're part of our Customer Success Plus program, ask them about it. They will help you. If not, you can send a ticket in, and we will get you documentation to help. Like we will help you get this set up. The thing I want to make sure to point out in terms of scoping for billing is we're getting a little bit into the weeds here, but just to make sure that we're clear, we don't blow anyone's bill up here. When you do enable the Intune integration, it's going to ask you here about Windows device type scope. If you scope this to just AVD hosts, there will be no change in your billing whatsoever, no matter what. If you scope it to also physical devices, there is the potential for a change in billing. So make sure to talk to someone at Nerdio first before you change, if you do this on your own, before you scope it to physical devices. But once the Intune integration is enabled, you can enable Intune Insights, and all this reporting becomes available. The endpoints interface here becomes available. But again, we're happy, check with your customer success program if you're a part of that. Otherwise, just get in contact with us. Otherwise, it will help you out.
Yep. And especially if you're a TSM customer from Alchemy, or if you have any kind of questions, we'll happily walk through this with you. It's an easy conversation. It's an easy integration to be able to go through on that front. So, okay. So that gives us insight on patching, on status, on compliance status. And I know in the questions, the number 2 thing that came up happened to be around application and packaging. And Intune has 3-4 different ways to be able to impact applications, including a roll your own when you start to wrap applications with the Intune wrapper. But there's a couple of new options too. So one of the things that I really like within the Nerdio console as well is Nerdio wants to be that one-stop shop for all things endpoint. So when we start to bring in applications, Nerdio has what they call their unified catalog. And their unified catalog, if you pull down the repository that you have up top there, unified catalog brings in a lot of different areas. So it brings in Intune applications. It brings in what they call shell apps, which are going to be kind of their own written app installer. It has the ability to bring in config-man and configuration manager packages. But then there's some modern stuff in there too. So we can actually add a public Wingit repo. So basically using Chocolatey effectively under the hood, Microsoft wrote Wingit. Wingit has a couple thousand applications that are pretty much public available. They are mostly consumer, but not necessarily, but it's a great stop on what to go from there. You can add a private Wingit repo. You can have your own scriptable installer to go through. And when we aggregate all of this information, we aggregate this into what they call the unified catalog. Even if you have third-party software applications that are injecting into Intune, we can see that and have that ability to go through, manage appropriately, etc. So we've got a couple of apps in here that we see. We see Cisco WebEx Meetings, Evernote, Chrome is the big one, I think, in this regard, and also some of the others, .NET 2.2, 3, Runtime, etc. So from the consumer side of the space, Chrome's definitely one of the biggest kind of offenders and proponents of this, where they update almost every week, if not multiple times per week. So one of the things that can be really hard from an Intune perspective is if you are wrapping, or even if you're doing the MSI management for Chrome, that takes cycles to be able to go grab that MSI, package it, inject it into the console, add it as a subsequent application, and deploy. It's easy, it just takes time. So adding in that Wingit application for Chrome, what we have the ability to do here is actually set Chrome as a deployment style. So if we want to go through that, let's go deploy. And we can deploy Chrome inside of multiple different ways. So if it's going to be an AVD, we have AVD workspaces, we have Win365, but being that this is an Intune-driven webinar, let's go over to the Intune tab. And now we see our device catalog for any user and group, any device and group. And maybe we want to target that down. So do we have groups defined for your lab? So we can see that we want to deploy Chrome to enemy demo SQL admins. This is a collection inside of Intune to be able to go through, manage, and deploy. So we can go ahead and deploy Chrome here. We can schedule this. We can create a policy against this to go through. And we have a couple of options in terms of reboot after installation. Can we force a reboot regardless of if the client requests it or not? And we can actually go ahead and deploy and save. So if we deploy and save here, this will do what it needs to do and start to deploy this app. But because this is Winget, and because of the integration that's here, what Nerdio was going to do is every 15 minutes, it's got a job to go out and check that Winget repo. And if there's an update, it'll put it in. So we have the ability to set an installer once. Chrome, up to date, go. Every 15 minutes, this will check, set it, be able to pop in line and go from there and check your show favorites. And we can actually search that.
Oh, yep. That's what it's funny. I joke about that all the time. I get bit by my
all
own
the time.
I was actually thinking it wasn't showing up because I already had it in there. And yeah, I was kind of trying to play along with where you had your latest or even specifying, you can use
specify version. And when you hit latest, that will be automatically up to date, latest version all the time running on a 15-minute cycle. So when that comes through, you'll have that ability. You now have that simplicity, that automation that Nerdio brings so that you have more time to do more important things other than just simply to manage Chrome. Huge thing on this. The other thing that I wanted to pop in play from a unified catalog, go ahead and cancel here. And there are many times where we have personas of applications. So, especially in like the financial front, I know we've got a handful of, banks, credit unions, that type of thing. We can actually create personas of applications called an application group. And inside that application group, we can basically say, hey, if you're a teller, or if this is a clinician machine, if you're in healthcare, if this is a factory worker, if you're from HR, AP, AR, et cetera, we can actually create a group of applications inside of this unified catalog to be able to say, anytime we want to install an HR, here is your group of apps to go with it. So now we're not trying to manage one-off apps at a time. To be able to say, hey, okay, we've got groups. Now we've got the applications to go through. We can basically say, we want our demo SQL admins to always get this version of application, keep them up to date, and now we can go through. So when we autopilot machines, if they're bringing in another box, say you've got developers that have access to it, you can deploy, VC++, you can deploy dev environments, you can deploy Docker. You can actually kind of run a lot of these install types all the way through, group them up appropriately, and then any time that you want to make changes, you can actually add and remove applications from that group, and they will take effect at scale wherever those groups are deployed. So you're starting to aggregate in app management from that simplicity perspective, from the manual update perspective, and start to use automation where it makes sense, start to use it from that regard to go through. So those are two things that we see from an application management perspective. There are more. Those are just the two that we run into on a daily basis when we come into that app management catalog, where this is going to be substantially faster, easier, and more extensible than simply having Intune on its own.
To add even to what Doug was saying, that we can't stress enough how convenient and powerful a tool Public Winget is. I think it's like 30, like you said, there's thousands. I think it's like 3,500 applications, and I guarantee there's things in there where you are probably spending time packaging them, trying to figure out how to deliver them, and you don't have to be doing that. It blows people's minds when they see, well, wait, I could like all these as just as examples, Azure CLI, Visual Studio Code, all coming from Public Winget. If you are packaging these things, Chrome, Adobe, Creative Cloud, you don't have to be doing that. Let Public Winget deliver it for you. And that Public Winget integration, that's out of the box with Nerdio. When you install Nerdio, it's already done. So it's not even an extra step you have to take. It's just ready to go out of the box. So strongly recommend, even in your own operations now, take a look at the public WinGet catalog and start leveraging that as a tool because it is very helpful for you.
All righty. So the other thing, especially in some of the larger shops that are out there, is tracking changes in Intune. Not necessarily the easiest thing to do, especially from a policy perspective. And there were many times that inside of policy management, on an Intune perspective, something may change, something may, adjust, and whether that changes the experience, aka it breaks something, or it's just something that you're unsure of who did it, how it kind of worked. And ultimately, even if it was a positive change, and with the best change management programs that are out there, things happen. And that's just a fact of life. From an Intune perspective, oftentimes that's almost impossible to be able to manage. So what we have here within the Nerdio console is Nerdio is actually looking at our policies from a compliance perspective, from a configuration perspective, security baselines, app policies, update policies. We're exposing that information inside of Nerdio, and then we're doing things like tracking backups. So we can automatically back up every single policy with change tracking, regardless of what it was, who put it in, when they put it in. We don't have to add it to the schedule. Everything can go through here. So inside of these policies, it shows us who changed it, when they changed it, how they changed it. We can actually restore policies. So we can restore the assignment. If the assignment changed, we can restore policy and assignment and policy own information.
We've seen a lot of really interesting use for this, especially in the Intune world. And there's the obvious use case like Doug was just mentioning, where someone's made a change and whoops, we need to go back, or what was the change? Someone didn't write it down. So there's the obvious fix there. The other interesting application we've seen for this, particularly in Intune space, is remediating policy tattooing. So you can set an Intune policy, it turns a feature on. Just because you remove that policy does not necessarily then turn that feature off. You often have to make an anti-policy, a counter policy to undo something that was previously done. But maybe you don't want to undo the whole policy. You just need a little bit. So this can give you that flexibility, maybe a month or two or however far down the road, to be able to go back, restore just a previous policy without the assignments, so we can take a look at that policy and say, all right, which specific components of this do we need to now create a policy for to be able to reverse out? So it gives you that historical context without you having to be the one to manually write things down or find it in a ticket note somewhere. It's great flexibility in terms of archiving, and also being able to call out orphan policies. So if you've got a policy or a config hanging out there not assigned to anything, we'll just call that out, and then you can choose, should this exist or should it be assigned to something?
Yep. And I know we have a couple of backups in there, like one of those test policies that Greg created. One of the things that we can actually do is do a side-by-side test or side-by-side view of what that looks like. So if we have, one of our policies that are here, can we get into the screen where we actually have the before and after on what that changes?
You're not talking about policy conflict detection.
Not conflict detection, just looking at the backup to see what changed.
I'm about to learn something new about my own product today.
Go ahead and hit edit. And what we can see is when these policies come into line, what we're actually seeing is, the actual policy itself. So this is the name. We can see assignments. This is going to be where there is. We can fill the assignment from a backup. We can revert to the original assignment. We have that option to do include, exclude, groups, users, etc. Go to content. So content, ultimately, all of the XML files are going to be here. The JSON files are going to be here. So we have that ability to be able to tweak things like changes very simply, to be able to say password minimum length right here is 6. Maybe we want to change that to 8 on that regard. So that would be one of the ways to be able to go through and do that, to go through and then finish. This is going to be policy editing. So oftentimes there are policies that we like to duplicate. Maybe it's, a specific around what some of those items look like, how they actually go through, how that's going to manage that policy. So we can actually literally copy and paste from one into the other and view what those changes were to be able to go through. So that's going to be one way to do it. So if we click off of here, Don, and just kind of clear that. Now, like our accounting compliance policy, we've had 27 backups. There's a lot of things there. If you hit the down arrow and hit compare, now we can actually say, what is that side by side? So our backup version 27, because there may not have been changes there, let's take that to like backup version of 1 or a very early version up there. So in a very quick way, we can see what changed as we're walking through here. So we've got a scheduled action configuration change that goes through. If you scroll down, there's at least one more change down there. And we've got the versioning to go through. So not many changes to go through, but there was a scheduled action that changed. And if we click assignments, I'm not sure if there's been an assignment change in here, but no assignments to compare. So this gives us the ability to say what changed, what specifically were we going for, if there were issues, if there were problems, how do we actually roll through that in a way that we can actually see what's going to change, what's going to happen, what configuration change. One of the things that we see here that happen a fair amount is AV changes. So if you have Defender for Endpoint, you're pushing policy by Intune. Every time you run an exclusion, you're going to create a backup version, you're going to create a policy change. So we have that history over time, that evolution of your policy to see what goes on, what worked, what didn't work. Did something get removed that shouldn't? Did something get added and shouldn't? Now we have that ability tracked, easily viewable to be able to say, we need a change, let's make the change. So very cool from this regard to be able to go through and actually manage policy, especially versions of policy over time on how that changes. Now, the other thing that we kind of get in here, and we can go ahead and kill this window, is oftentimes in Intune, especially in some of these larger organizations where we have multiple people creating policy, is you may have one policy that says my AV engine wants a 5-day delay and another policy to say it wants a 2-day delay. When that happens, in group policy, one would overwrite the other and we're fine. In Intune, what ends up happening? We get conflicts. And conflicts on an individual basis, you can kind of see. But personally, I think this view is a whole lot easier because we can actually see what's going to happen with that conflict. And in this case, it's DO enabled bypass. So we're excluding delivery optimization, and one policy says HTTP, the other one says bypass. So the setting is going to be there, the value is going to be there, the assignment is going to be there, and the context, well, MW user 2 has a conflict. What do we want to do about it? So in a very short way, we can actually see all policies, see all conflicts aside to it, and be able to say in a graphical way, oh, these are our two things that are in question. Now we don't have to drill down into that device, into policies, into the policy conflict window to be able to say, what's here? This will show us conflicts in a very quick way. And now we have that insight, that ability to go change and do what we need to do. Cool. So the question came up earlier too, and it said from a compliance policy, customers curious, are there any prepackaged compliance policies around? And the answer is going to be yes. Nerdio has a relationship with CIS to be able to say, from a CIS perspective, we are bringing in all of the CIS policies that they write through Nerdio into Intune. So we can actually say CIS level 1 auditing, CIS device lock, Windows Hello for Business, firewall, section 2280. All of these items, level 1, level 2, level 3, are going to be pre-built templates in Intune that map to those controls directly, written by CIS, that you now have the ability to apply. So if you've ever gone through, that 500-page doc that CIS provides to be able to try and build and roll your own policies, that's a nightmare. We've done it. Nobody wants to do that again. This gives you a very clickable one method, doink, that control is now being set. We have that. They're kept up to date by the CIS teams and the Nerdio teams. And as consumers, we can now apply that level to go through. So if we drop that CIS level 1 auditing for Windows 11 on there, this gives us the recommendation 5, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We can now see everything that it's going to be applying, which is a massive list of stuff. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 22 items in that list, more than 22 items in that list. These are policies that we have the ability to bring on CIS level 1, level 2, level 3, and just apply. We don't have to build them. We don't have to create them. We can just use them. One of the better things from a security perspective on that we have the ability to bring in line. Last thing that I think it was extremely challenging on the enterprise side of the world, especially since the days of COVID, is Config Manager had a great tool that it was called Remote Assistance, where you could go remote into a box, be able to view it, be able to see it, to be able to interact with it. You had the control and granularity to say if you wanted break-in or not. And Intune, well, for the longest time, didn't have it. Then they added a remote help, which is basically a go-to-assist window from the Intune side of the world. It's $8 a month. And in my opinion, it's extremely limited because, number one, it's got to be interactive. There is no way to view a screen non-interactively. And once you're there are challenges in terms of UAC escalation. There are challenges in being able to run scripts. There are challenges to be able to actually remotely manage that device. So along comes Intune or Nerdio. Nerdio has a feature called Console Connect. Exceedingly easy to be able to go through, included in the license. And now we actually have a toolbox scenario and a console scenario. So in Console Connect, we have control around what this experience is going to look like. But we now can view a machine, whether that is an AVD box, whether that is Win365, whether that is a physical endpoint, a virtual endpoint, it does not matter. We now have that ability to manage remote console connects, regardless of physicality. They don't have to be on-prem. Regardless of who is on that box, we can actually go into an unsigned in box. We have the ability to go in from an administrative console, from the local console. We can shadow or we can drive. In here, we have that toolbox perspective. So if we have files, we can actually transfer files back and forth. So maybe there's a config file that we need to update on a box in order to get back into VPN. We've all seen that one go south. We can actually send files, receive files to be able to go there, adjust that on the fly, drop that in, and in a very fast, efficient way, manage that remote endpoint.
One of the other really cool things about this, by the way, is it gives you the opportunity, in case you're using this for AVD, to be able to connect into a specific session on a multi-session machine. As Doug was mentioning, a lot of the things that changed in COVID is so many people using so many more personal devices to connect. For anyone who's been through the conversation of trying to talk someone into installing an agent on their personal device, that it basically turns into a hostage negotiation situation. They don't want to do it. So you don't have to do that anymore. The agent, in this case, it's installed on the endpoint, and you can select what session. If it's single session, you're on the desktop, you're good to go. This can be paired with consent. So the user is notified when someone is connecting, given a message, and provided the opportunity to consent prior to allowing the connection. But whether it's single session or multi-session, you can get directly to that user session. And then for me personally, the other real power of this tool is being able to leverage the diagnostics box here, being able to get to a system level command prompt or PowerShell interface, being able to look at the device manager, being able to see running services and terminate them, being able to see running tasks and terminate them. And I can do this part effectively behind the user. So the user can keep working on their desktop while I'm looking at their machine, on its effective back end to get some information and be able to help this person out.
Yep. Hey, Don, question came in the chat. Can you console connect to anything other than a Windows device?
Great question. Mac OS support is coming online, I believe, in the next release, I believe in 6 weeks. So we will have Mac OS support very, very shortly.
Android, iOS, is that robot?
No, I mean, No, I mean, iOS is always going to be the tricky one just because iOS is natively very locked down. Android, we anticipate some form of support for that. I don't have it roadmapped. I couldn't give you a time of date right now. Mac OS is imminent. Android will be coming, but I don't have a date for it yet. iOS, we'll put that one on the very far. iOS is tricky.
Yeah. And I know we're kind of running a little bit short. The question became, how does it compare to something like a Ninja One? There are going to be similarities. There are going to be differences there. In this, drop a note into one of the chats, and we'll actually connect with you offline and kind of expand into that conversation further.
For me, this compares to a ConnectWise Screen Connect or Kaseya VSA, very much on par with what those tools can do from a remote session capability.
Yep. Okay. And I think with that, question came up earlier and we kind of answered it around how do we configure it. But if you are a Nerdio customer, especially if you're running the Nerdio premium license, this is already going to be there. If you're not a Nerdio customer and you only want endpoint management, Don, if we could say, how do we get that and what does that pricing look like? I guess, is that even possible?
So to leverage Console Connect through Nerdio, you would have to be a Nerdio customer. There is, we'll call it a scenario where, yes, you could be just a physical fleet. Let's say you're not making any use of Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365. That's fine. You could leverage Nerdio to just have the Intune integrations for your physical fleet and install Console Connect to your physical fleet. We have a couple customers that do that. So by all means, give me a call, give us a call. We'll be happy to talk that through with you to see if it works for you.
Yep. So Nerdio wants to be that manager of all endpoints. Physical, virtual, AVD, doesn't really matter. And I think what we've shown you today is a handful of workflows, specifically challenges that we've come across, whether it's compliance policies through CIS, being able to remotely manage things through Console Connect, having policy backup, restore visibility, conflict detection, unified app management, or endpoint policy reporting. This is the way to go. This is what we see as an add-on tool that makes a heck of a lot of sense. It exposes items that are simply not available in an Intune perspective. Even as an Intune Suite customer, there are a number of things that get added on. Biggest one would be the remote assistance from an Intune perspective. But like I said, there are challenges with remote assistance that make it very difficult to be able to go through run. So a question just came in, from Harry. Is there an automation creator, like creating scripts or automation from a tool like an N-Central? Maybe is the answer, but I think one of the things that's going to be really cool, exactly, is Nerdio has a Copilot enabled. So we can actually tell our Copilot to do something. And of course, live.
Yeah, the joys of live demo. I promise it works in production every time. And we do struggle with this specifically in the demo environment. You do not have this problem in production. It's going to kick it. I just need a little refresh. Yeah, Nerdio Manager Copilot's great. It leverages the Nerdio knowledge base for anything Nerdio you want to know, but also if you wanted to write you a script or write you a KQL query to get some good information out of AVD Insights, you can prompt it for what you need, and it'll give you some good output and explain how it got to its decision in terms of what it's writing you.
Yeah, so there is AI around that. So say it's hey, I need a script to be able to, this is one we've actually used. If you have a very large Teams voice and video implementation and you need to be able to set the DSCP values for QoS, Teams has a very specific way to do that. One of the ways that I've used this to say, hey, write a PowerShell script where I set the following DSCP values for Teams QoS, and it actually went through, found the docs from Learn, brought all that information in, created a script for it, and then all I had to do was deploy that script inside of Intune.
I didn't give it much to work with here in terms of values, so I'm hoping it kind of behaves. So yeah, it's going to want to know a little bit more information, but yeah, it can work with you to help you write scripts to apply against your environment. Very useful.
Just say Windows VMs.
So while we're doing this, I think the biggest takeaway once we cut over to cap out today is Don and Doug, if someone wants to get this up and running, end to end, what does it take to get it up and running? I think that's the biggest value add. Is how quickly you can get Nerdio running, and even just for Intune, be able to, understand Intune end to end and start using the product.
In a couple of hours, we can have you up and running, literally.
Installs from the Azure Marketplace, installs to your tenant. We are non-disruptive in, non-disruptive out. You could have an existing infrastructure. You could have 10,000 AVD session hosts out there, Windows 365 physical endpoint. Nerdio installs to your tenant. It can just ingest everything as it stands. Nothing has to get ripped up and rebuilt in Nerdio's way for it to be able to manage it. You could decide after a trial period, hey, never mind, nope, this wasn't for us. You can get Nerdio out of there. Your environment keeps right on going. We're an enhancement layer on top. We're not a replacement tool. We don't replace any of those features. None of that infrastructure ever becomes dependent on Nerdio to function. Even if Nerdio builds 25 host pools for you, Nerdio leaves, those host pools keep right on going. We're not replacing the underlying Microsoft infrastructure. We're just that enhancement layer on top, trying to make your life a little easier.
In another kind of lead-in question as well, so I'm an SCCM shop, configuration manager shop, whatever they call it nowadays. Yeah. End of support / servicing is coming up soon. Do you guys have a way to cut over to you guys easily?
Between Intune, Alchemy, ConfigMan, there is a path to be able to modernize. That process will happily help you out there.
Cool. And why should people care about that? Because I'll leave on that note.
Ultimately, Microsoft is pushing people to a number of different things, and we definitely see the value of that. But I think Entra ID only joined devices, whether it's Apple, whether it's iOS, governed by the cloud, managed anywhere without that on-prem dependency, is going to be a very, very big thing. From a ConfigMan perspective, there are ways to extend ConfigMan to public sources, but it's still based in that on-prem mentality. It's still going to be based in a domain join environment. And there are a ton of environments where that still thinks it work. So in that scenario where you want to modernize, you want to go through, the tools are there, the support is there, the ability is to go through there. Hybrid work demands that secure endpoint management. Good pull on that regard. So we have that ability to be able to provide the insight, to be able to provide the tooling, the value, to be able to streamline your device management posture, manage scale effectively, appropriately, do app management in a way that makes sense, and make your admins pull their hair out less. Because ultimately, the work is going to be there. How can we make their life easier? How can we make your end users' life easier so they don't have to open up as many tickets? Those are kind of going to be the things that we really kind of want to do here going forward.
Awesome. Well, all right, folks. Well, before we cut out today, there's a couple things I want to leave y'all with. First, there was a lot of good questions surrounding what if scenarios, et cetera. So what I recommend is we do offer what we call our modern endpoint strategy mastermind session. This is a complimentary session. You'd get to sit down deeper with Doug and team to go through, your endpoint strategy, answer some of those deeper questions that were out there, and really put together a roadmap of where you should head based on your endpoint goals. Right. And so it's very worth the time. It's a great way to understand how we work, and it's a great way to get to know Doug and his team. So, and then on top of that, if you're confused about all this licensing craziness that is Microsoft, we do offer what we call our Microsoft licensing strategy mastermind. This is, again, a complimentary workshop where you sit down with one of the best industry experts out there around licensing, Kyle, and he and his team can take you through what you own today, how you can get the most out of it, and is there opportunity to tweak this, tweak that, and get more bang for your buck, so to speak. So definitely worth looking at those two masterminds. I put links in the chat as an FYI, and definitely check those out. And then finally, our next webinar next month is going to be on the 29th, right before Halloween. And we're going to be focusing on a really cool product that's owned by Okta called Auth0. It's Auth0/Okta. But Auth0 is more focused on customer identity. So if you're in a realm of where you expose an application to a B2B consumer, or even a consumer like us, think about your bank account, think about something as little as going into Jersey Mike's. Think about how that deters you from signing up when there's no SSO strategy. That's what Auth0 can enable for more customer identity versus workplace identity. So we're going to be diving into, Auth0, what it really is, what it really means. And we're going to have Johnny Brister on, who's our CISO, and he's going to tell a story about a past experience when he was a customer and why customer identity matters. So definitely join that QR code there, and you'll get an email the next day or two getting the invite for that as an Alchemy insider. So keep an eye out in your calendar as well. And then finally, I want to say thank you to Doug and Don for jumping in today and joining us. And as I always do, I kind of let them leave with the audience with last thoughts. So, Doug, any final thoughts for the audience that you want to leave them with today? And you're on mute, bub.
When it comes to modern endpoint management, give us a call. We'll help you out. We'll get you there. We'll be able to, increase the end user adoption, be able to simplify your life as admins, and ultimately provide for a better fleet.
And Don, any final thoughts you want to leave the team with, the folks on the phone with today?
Yeah, it's like Doug said, you're not alone out there. Ask for help. You've got Alchemy here to help. You've got Nerdio here to help. Give us a call. Tell us what you're going through. Tell us what you're trying to do. Let us help.
And thank you guys for jumping on. I know you're very busy. And with that, I'm going to say thank you folks for jumping in again. And if, as always, we run these at the end of the month, please click on the survey link at the end and tell us how we're doing and give us feedback, because I want to make these more fun and interesting as we go into 2026. With that, I'm going to say thanks for jumping in. And as I always say, see y'all on the flip side and hope to see you next month.